Kevin Durso covers the Flyers for 97.3 ESPN.com. Flyers coverage brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up, and they'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com. Win real money with their sportsbook along with casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. The Flyers open up their series with the Montreal Canadiens on Wednesday, 8 o'clock. We'll have the game right here on 97.3 ESPN and on the free mobile app. So much to dive into here as the Flyers beat Tampa Bay. And I want to start off with that, Kevin, is, there was a game in Philly earlier this year. It was like in February, and Flyers lost that game 1-0. And on the surface, you'd be like, 1-0, good game. Never felt like the Flyers were in that game. And what has changed from that point to this point between these two teams?
I think there's a lot that's changed. I think that game was fresh off of a 6-game road trip where they didn't look very good. They came off of a 1-4-1 road trip. And before the game against Tampa, they beat the Washington Capitals. But there really wasn't any reason to feel confident that this team could beat the Tampa Bay Lightning at that time. The 6-game road trip was still fresh in your mind, and you kind of looked at that Washington game as another one of these examples where the Flyers play up to the competition a little bit, and I think that's what was fresh in people's minds. And it didn't feel like that was a game where they really had a shot going into it. I think the difference now is that the way that this team has continued to come together, you feel like they've got a shot in every single game they play. They just have a mentality about them, and a good word that was used several times in the NBC broadcast on Saturday night, they have a swagger to them that really gives you this feel that they don't think that there's anybody out there that can beat them if they can put all the aspects of the game together, and that's what you're seeing with this team right now.
We kind of touched on it earlier. I want to get your opinion. Flyers came, it looks like, with the purpose to win this thing. I mean, it looked like they were prepared, and their mission was, let's get the number 1 seed. Do you say, I don't know if the other teams felt that way, or are the Flyers at the point now where they are just clearly better than these other 3 teams that were vying for the 1 seed?
I don't know if I would call it better than the other 3 teams, but I think that they belong in a conversation. I think kind of people overlook the Flyers among those other 3 teams. Washington got a Stanley Cup 2 years ago. Boston was in the final a year ago. Tampa Bay has been a perennial favorite for years now. I think that the Flyers were kind of that team that didn't feel like it looked like they didn't belong among those teams. I think now they've shown they belong. And, I don't know that Boston was relaxing during this time or whatever. I mean, maybe they kind of were to an extent, but also I think that there's a harmful nature to do that. You're now going to try to flip the switch in a playoff series against a team that swept out their competition in the qualifier. Good luck trying to get it back to the same speed that you were before the pause. I mean, Boston was on fire at that time too, and they haven't shown anything similar to what they were before the pause. Washington and Tampa looked similar to what they were before the pause. I don't think that there was anything too different about them. I think the Flyers have proven they've become a team that ranks right up there with Washington, might be even better than they are now. And Tampa Bay is kind of that X-factor team that I think is the one that stands out in the conversation as the other team that people keep an eye on the most out of any of them that are in this Eastern Conference picture that you think are going to be hanging around there toward the end. Saturday was viewed as an Eastern Conference final preview to some extent, and I don't think that that's a stretch. I think that these are the 2 best teams in the conference right now based on everything I've seen in the last week.
One thing that stood out to me in that third period, the pressure was all Tampa Bay. There's no denying that. But when a team has their back against the wall in a game, especially in the playoffs, you saw that with Toronto when they were playing the Blue Jackets in Game 4 there, teams are going to come in waves. The one thing I loved was the fact that the Flyers blocked so many shots. They chipped the puck out of the zone. Carter Hart was making big saves. They didn't crumble, and it's easy to crumble. They didn't crumble, and they just allowed to stay true to the system, and you're going to have to be able to do that when it comes down to a Game 3 next round, and there's 3 minutes left, and you're up 1 goal. You're going to have to be able to perform in those moments, and they did just that against a really powerful Tampa Bay team.
Yeah, they didn't. Let's not look at Tampa Bay's performance in the third period and act like it was something like an onslaught completely. The Flyers outshot them 20-6 the first period. They really were coming in waves in the first period. Tampa Bay only got 11 shots to the net, and you talked about the block shots. You talked about sometimes keeping them to the outside, too. I thought that was one of the biggest things about that third period is that even though Tampa Bay had the zone time, they didn't have anybody who was alone in front of the net. They didn't have any odd man situations. It wasn't really the same kind of intensity. So, Tampa Bay had that first period where, you get a couple breakaways in there. The chances are much more dangerous out of that I don't think you saw that in the third period. I think you saw a team that, even though they were allowing a lot of the zone time, they knew the way to lock it down. They knew to take the pressure in waves and found a way to keep the score where it was, so that when they came out of this, they were still on top and clearly running away with the game. It looks like a pretty lopsided score on paper when you see 4-1. Tampa Bay played a solid game, and I think you got exactly what you should have expected from Tampa Bay, especially in that third period. I do think there's a little something to the fact that Victor Hedman left the game early on and wasn't there for that last stretch, because I think you factor in his point shot and his ability to move the puck in the offensive zone when he's out there, especially in 6-on-5 opportunities. I think that might have played into it a little bit. I don't know if the Flyers would have come out of that completely unscathed, but I think that they definitely would have bought enough time that what you saw wasn't a fluke. They were going to be able to finish off this game the way that they were blocking shots, the way they're dedicated to the defensive zone play, and that's one of the biggest things about this team that makes them a contender, is that they have the commitment in the defensive zone and then are very opportunistic the other way.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because the other night when Elliott plays, he played a very good game. He made a big save at one point in that game, but at the end of the day, he's only making 17 shots. That seems to be a big factor, is teams can't get clean shots on this team.
Yeah, they really can't. And, the Flyers were one of those teams that consistently started to, before the pause, started to find this level of play where they'd never allow 30 shots in a game, and they would constantly be taking 35 to 40 themselves. They're a team that comes at you in waves, and then on the other side is very stingy defensively. They just don't allow much at all. It's the dedication that Alain Vigneault has put into this team in terms of trying to get them to buy into the system, where it's got to come from the back end first and foremost. You've got to play a solid defensive game first, and the offense will come as a result of that. And I think that the second goal that they scored in the Tampa game is a great example of that. It's a play in the neutral zone. You get a loose puck. It's kind of a turnover to an extent, and that quickly you're moving the other way. Tampa Bay's a little bit out of sorts, and a 2-on-1 comes of it, and you bury it. That's the opportunity that this team takes advantage of, and that's going to go a long way in any playoff series, because it's John Cooper, Tampa Bay's head coach, called it a few bad habits and he said good teams will make you pay for those bad habits that creep into your game, but even if you're a good team, and I think the Flyers exposed that with Tampa Bay. A few bad habits, maybe a couple turnovers, and that can lead to goals the other way. And I think that that's what you're seeing from this team. They know how to take advantage of the opportunities in front of them, and a lot of times it starts from just standing tall in the neutral zone or in their own zone.
Did Shane Gostisbehere work his way back into the lineup? He was very impressive. Honestly, I was stunned to see him play that well.
I think he did. It's going to be tough to say, because they really do like the play of Robert Haig. This is a good problem for the Flyers to have, that they've got so many guys that you think can make the lineup and don't necessarily, may not actually make it at the end because everybody's playing so well. But I think he did earn a spot. I liked him on the third pairing. I thought that his offensive game was there, which is the most important part for me. Defensively, he's still going to be a bit of a liability no matter what. He wasn't so much in that Tampa game per se, but he's going to be at times. There's going to be times when teams get scoring chances when his pairing is out there. But if he's contributing on the offensive side, I think you can overlook that, and that was the biggest problem with him earlier in the season, dating back to last season. He's out there and he's not contributing on the offensive side. When he's not contributing on the offensive side and you're giving up goals with him on the ice, then he doesn't fit into the lineup. But in this case, I think he earned himself a spot because his mobility, once again, looked really good. He got chances to the net. The first goal was a wrist shot from him that was deflected down by Nick Aube-Kubel. And then the Farabee goal, what a pass across the slot to Farabee by Gostisbehere in that situation. And Farabee, impressively, takes a rocket pass and then launches it on a one-timer into the back of the net at a time when the Flyers really could have used another goal, because Tampa Bay was starting to maybe feel something after their power play goal. The Flyers come right back again and get another goal that gives them the 2-goal lead. It was in a big spot, and Gostisbehere had a lot to do with some of the offensive success in that game. So I think he's in next game. We'll have to wait and see, but I think he should be in.
Kevin Durso covers the Flyers, 97.3 ESPN.com, at Kevin_Durso. No Voracek in the game on Saturday. What does it look like for him on Wednesday?
Well, we're not going to be 1,000% sure on his status for Wednesday. Alain Vigneault has now told us that he's going to be very tight-lipped about the lineups and the line combinations going forward, because it is now officially the playoffs for the Flyers. But Voracek is going to practice today, or was on the ice for practice. They had a 2:30 practice today. And so I would imagine he's considered a game-time decision for Wednesday. I'd imagine if he's able to practice today and he can get maybe at least one more practice in, that I would expect him to play, but everyone is still saying it's going to be a game-time decision for him.
Are you concerned with the power play? There's going to be plenty of opportunities in these playoff series where they can put away teams, and if their power play continues to struggle like this, it might come back to bite them.
That's definitely the case. I'm not overly concerned just yet. I think because I think that these teams they've played have good penalty kills, and it's known around the league that they're good special teams opponents. There's no question about it. Montreal is not a very good special teams opponent for the Flyers here. They should be able to. This could change the series. Honestly, I mean, this could be the biggest difference in the series is the special teams play of the Flyers compared to the Canadiens. And if you can't get the power play going and take advantage of those opportunities, I think the Washington game is the one that stands out to me because the Flyers were 0 for 6 in that game and on the power play, and you can't have that many power play opportunities and not come away with anything. And there was a lot of chances in that game for the Flyers to really put it away with a power play goal, and they weren't able to do it. In this series against the Canadiens, if you can get the power play going, because the penalty kill looks good, but if you can get the power play going, I think that that's going to be a game changer for the Flyers. I think that could be the big difference in them making this series look relatively easy as opposed to Montreal hanging around in games, because I think that that's the area where they're going to try to gain the most momentum. If their penalty kill is good, they will get a ton of momentum from it because they'll feel like they can stop this team, and it's essentially the formula they used to beat Pittsburgh. They got good defensive effort, good goaltending, and they felt like they could come back and be opportunistic the other way. A few goals can win a game, and I think that's what Montreal's going to try to do.
What's the story in your mind, good, bad, not sure, where Aube-Kubel, Pitlick, the second line has been very well, but you're not getting scoring from the top line. Is that good? Is that a concern, or reading too much into that?
I think it's reading too much into it because, quite honestly, if you're getting scoring from the depth guys and the top line's not the one contributing and you're still winning games, who cares? The good teams that find a way to win the Stanley Cup at the end of the year are the ones that have the most depth and have the ability to get contributions from up and down the lineup. And the Flyers are getting that right now. And I do think that it is only a matter of time before some members of the top line really break out. Sean Couturier had 2 assists in that game against Tampa, and both of them were really impressive plays. One on the 2-on-1 with Aube-Kubel, and the other one helps to set up Farabee's goal because he just makes a simple little play along the boards. One hand on his stick, pokes the puck away from a defender, and gets it to Gostisbehere, and it's a one quick motion, and the puck's in the back of the net before you know it. Those are the plays that tell me that the top line is starting to feel some things. I think they're going to start to pick it up soon. And if the power play gets going featuring a lot of those top players, then look out, because this team, if that's probably the one weakness right now so far since the return, is that the power play wasn't going and the top line hasn't been scoring. If they can get those going and they're still getting the contributions from the bottom half of the lineup and from the defensemen, and the goaltending is still holding up, then this has the look of a complete team, and that would go a long way in the playoffs.
All right, Kevin Durso has storylines for the Flyers and Canadian series. We will certainly be tapping into him before game number 1 on Wednesday. You can read that right now on our website, 973ESPN.com. Follow him at Kevin_Durso. It's the Flyers and the Montreal Canadiens, a 1-12 matchup in round number 1. A little unconventional, but that's who they get, and you'll hear that right here on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, download the free mobile app and listen to the Flyers right on your phone. All right, Kevin, we'll talk to you soon, pal.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Kevin Durso, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.